Hello, hello, hello. Oh my gosh, dude, the lighting in my house is so bad. Oh. Okay, today we have a battle of the warriors. I am comparing Greek Spartans, the samurai of Japan, and the medieval knights of Britain, Norse Vikings, specifically. We will be comparing these four militant groups, except they're not militant groups, they are, but I'm comparing one of each. So each warrior to see individually which one on average is the best, like the greatest warrior. We will be defining who is the greatest warrior through both a point system, so first place gets 4 points, second gets 3, third gets 2, fourth gets 1, right? And we'll be comparing them in multiple categories. The categories are five categories. Combat skill, 2, weaponry and armor, 3, intellect and psychology, 4, on the pinky, we have physical power, i.e. endurance, strength, speed, agility, and training, physical power and training, that's what it is, physical power. And finally, reputation and legacy. What did they leave behind? I do manual effects, I call them. Transition. First, we have combat skill. The samurai, they trained in a little bit of jujitsu. They were trained upon horseback. They utilized weaponry. Samurai didn't train as much hand-to-hand. They were very much based on weapon training. They were very much trained upon weapon combat. Spartans, they were more blunt. They trained with hands. They punched a lot. They melee attack, shields, spears. Samurai, they're very intricate. Most bang for your buck when it came to combat skill. Like, a Spartan, they're just gonna blast through, just boom, boom, boom. That's gonna cost a lot of energy. A samurai, they're gonna be careful, they're going to be very controlled, they're very adaptable. They're gonna say, how could I take out my opponent for the least energy expenditure on my part? Now, the knight, they were not very hand-to-hand, because again, they had this bulky armor on. They're not very mobile. They really utilized weapons and ranged melee weapons, i.e. the sword. That was the long sword in particular. They had a lot of range with that long sword. They utilized, of course, the shield. They were not, while they were trained in hand-to-hand, they came across a little bit of boxing in their time. Knights, of course, they could box. Spartans, they were better boxers. Knights, they didn't rely on hand-to-hand as much weaponry combat training. And again, they're so heavy, they're not really going to affect you. Now, we have the Vikings. Do not get me wrong, the Vikings were absolutely trained in combat. They were very skilled combatants. They ambushed you, element of surprise, and they just pummeled you down. They had the axe, just big, not very controlled, just barbaric menaces, just running in, just hacking and slashing. And so when it comes to combat skill, in last place, I'm gonna give the Viking for 1 point. This is combat skill alone, not how effective their combat is. So when I'm pointing combat skill, I'm not necessarily going over how effective their combat is. We'll go over that more in weaponry and armor. For now, we're just who is the most raw skilled. The Viking is last place. They're wild with it. 3, I'm gonna put the knight. 2, I'm gonna put the Spartan, and at 1, I'm gonna put the samurai. So, point system. 1 point for the Vikings, 2 points for the knight, 3 points for the Spartan, 4 points for the samurai. Next! Weaponry and armor. Now, let's start with the Vikings. The Vikings utilized, of course, they had a helmet, they had, armor-wise, they had a helmet, and they had some very thick clothing. Big, thick hides. This kept them warm, this kept them going, and this kept them moving. But for like piercing durability, a spear's making it through, right? They're gonna stay warm. Temperature-wise, they're going to be okay. More so than a lot of these other categories. But overall durability, for the armor on the Viking, there's not a lot there. Weaponry, they are utilizing axes, they have some swords, they have a bow and arrow. Those are their main 3. So they utilize archery, they utilize axe, big heavy hacking axes again, if they're just jump up. Like, again, they're not as skilled, so they want to take you out ambush-wise and take you out with the first strike. Doesn't matter how good you are if you got an axe in your neck, right? The Spartan, they utilize shields, spears, and swords. A little bit of axe, a little bit of archery, but their main one, they got the shield, again, for weaponry, all of these groups utilized the shield wall at one point or another. Mostly Spartans, Vikings, then the Knights and the Samurai, but they all utilized them in a great amount. Don't get me wrong, they're more intricate, they're more skilled than the Vikings. They have a little more range and speed than the Vikings because they have the intricate sword. They have the spear, that's a little bit of throwing, but once you threw that, you lost it, right? You don't get it back, you run over and get it. And they have the shield. For the Samurai, now, the Samurai are actually the modern-ish of the four, right? Knights kind of left us in medieval times. Spartan left us before the year 0, like BC, these guys are around. I do understand that technology plays a big role here. Like, again, the Samurai were utilizing guns, gunpowder. That really wasn't a thing for a lot of these other guys here. But yes, they utilized guns, of course, the sword. They utilized archery. They had spears. They had, of course, they had shields. They had full armor, leaving the eyes open. The armor was, put up a photo. The armor was, it was definitely full coverage, but it was a little more fluid than the Knight's armor. They utilized shotguns. They had spears. They had daggers. When it came to weapons, again, they were the Samurai are very good here. They have a lot of weaponry, and they are skilled with a lot of those weapons. The Knight, again, fully armored up. If it wasn't direct metal plating, it was chainmail. They were by far the most durable of the group, right? Now, if this was a head-to-head confrontation, I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure, that gun would still pierce that metal armor. But this is not a head-to-head confrontation, this is who was the best warrior. So, the Knights, again, when it comes to melee hits, fully covered up, no problem. They utilized archery, of course. They had the long sword. They had shields, and they really surprised me. They utilized the mace a lot. Pointing this for point system. Last place is going to go to the Spartans because they do not have nearly as much protection to the elements. Third place is, gonna go to the Viking, so that's 2 points for the Viking. That's plus 2 points for the Viking, plus 1 point for the Spartan. Knights are second place and get 3 points. There we go. Again, the armor, the mace, perfect. And first place again is going to be the Samurai. Again, they just have such an arsenal. They still have the armor that the Knights have with more mobility. Round 3. Intellect and psychology, and this is what I'm really excited for. Now, when you look at the psychology mostly between these four groups, they're all warriors, but it's so vastly different. Like, let's look at the psychology and intellect of the Vikings. Of course, these were all the best warriors, so they weren't dumb. Some were. And Vikings, for better or for worse, they definitely have a reputation of being just bloodthirsty beasts that don't think, they just hack and slash. They were still smart, don't get me wrong. Like, to be a successful warrior, that you are still a smart-ish, smart to the point. Were Vikings on average the least intelligent of the four? No, I wouldn't say that. Believe it or not, Spartans were the least intelligent of the four, but that might be because they were the oldest and they were around them first. Now, Viking. Now, psychology. They looked at violence and conquest and destruction. In their culture, it was fun. It was a pastime. They built games off it. They trained for it through a lot more, and like their psychology was very much this isn't it's not like I have to do this for my family. It's I get to do this with my family. That was the Viking mentality. From birth, they were conditioned and learned through taking in from their families that conquest, it's enjoyable. And that I think is I think that's crazy that you're able to instill that into a society, but that is how they got that. Next, the Samurai. Now, you take the Samurai are like almost an exact opposite contrast to the Vikings. These guys, their intellect, very smart. They're very smart. If you look, ninjas were actually a subcategory of the samurai. All ninja were samurai, but not all samurai were ninja, kind of thing. And ninjas were kind of like the CIA of the modern America, Japan's intelligence agency. But oh yeah, you look at the intellect of the samurai. You look at how when they fight, their psychology, like the Buddhist monks, they learned from the Buddhist. What am I saying? But they did. Now, it's needless to say, all these people had extremely high pain tolerances. But see, that's it. The Vikings, they enjoy it. That's how they push through the pain. The samurai, they control it. They understand it and they disregard it as it's not an issue. And just the sheer control they had over their bodies, they looked at every fight like a calculated problem that they have to solve, like a puzzle. And I think that's also so cool. So of course they use their raw intellect and their gained intellect through training since birth. They have all the tools and they know how to use their tools and apply them properly. I think that's so cool. The Knights. The Knights were, believe it or not, the second smartest here. The Knights, again, they're compared to the Spartan, they were very, very futuristic and modern, right? The Knights, they, again, conditioned since birth. The psychology of the Knight was very much for my lord, for my god, for my king. You were fighting for an ideology. You were fighting for something bigger than yourself, and that's how they kept pushing. Because at the end, even if they died, it wasn't about them. They are pushing for something greater. The knight who trained you since birth, the one who knighted you, it was very much, I am fighting not for myself but for them, and that's how they pushed through. That was their psychology. And they were not dumb by any means. Again, they were smarter than the Vikings, on average not as smart and controlled as the samurai though. Now the Spartan psychology was, it doesn't matter. We will just keep on going. If you look at their training, which again we'll get into in the next category, you looked at them and they were durable, they were tough. They did not care what you threw at them. It was just go, 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 go. I will kill you unless you kill me. They weren't analyzing every fight like the samurai. They weren't serving a higher power outside their own city, outside their own brethren. They weren't just hacking and slashing. They had one goal and they pursued it. You could cut off their arms. When it comes to psychology, from a fighting standpoint, the Spartan were unmatched. They would keep going. Unless you honestly incapacitated them completely, they're not stopping. The way they lost their main, I think it was 371 BC, let me put that up here, in the Battle of, right there, they actually lost their sole goal, tunnel vision focused, because of their psychology, that they had one strategy, they had one battle tactic, and when that battle tactic lost, because before they just overforced them, we just kept going and no one could overcome that overwhelmment. But then someone did, and the second their one battle tactic was overwhelmed and overcame, they lost. Point system. Last place, unfortunately, is the Spartan. Now, their psychology is insane. The way they will keep pushing. There's nothing you can do, but it led to such a tunnel vision outlook that, again, that was their downfall. They were too tunnel visioned. Third place will be the Knight. They have the armor, I mean, they fought for honor, they were smart, they were nothing to be slept on, but I just think they're... Second place, I'm gonna give the Viking for 3 points. They weren't by any means dumb. They were still smart, relatively speaking. The outlook they conditioned their young from birth to have, that is truly such a unique and insane way to look at things. It blows my mind. And first place, the Samurai. I mean, I'm pretty sure Samurai have gotten first place every single time. They were broken. The control they have, the adaptability they have, the intellect they possess. Physical power and training. Now let's start with the Spartan. The Spartan, oh my goodness, trained from the age of 7 with their brethren as family, as blood brothers. They were given no shoes, just enough food to survive. They were given one rag cloth to endure the elements. That's all their clothing. They were like they were David Goggins times like 100, dude. They trained strength, endurance, durability, not only of the body but of the mind. They were trained on how to steal, they were trained for cunning, they were trained for physical power and endurance, they were trained in combat such as boxing, they were trained in spear combat, shield combat, battle tactics, only one, because once that one gave out, they lost. Right, now the Vikings. Physically, believe it or not, the Vikings, do not get me wrong. They were strong, durable, endure. They were trained very effective on the water. They were very good navigators, the Vikings. Because again, they island to island, they crossed water to conquer islands, right? But they also trained heavily on speed. They were agile, they were fast, they had a high range speed, they had a high combat speed, and this was to further fuel their ambush tactic style. Jump in, speed blitz the whole village, no diff your verse, if you know what I'm saying. They trained for speed and efficiency, and they were not trained since birth like the other 3 groups here. It was ingrained in their culture more so than any other of the... The training is how they enjoyed this kind of thing, how they enjoyed the conquer. Their games, their talks, their stories, their poetry. All of it was focused around enjoying and idolizing this conquest. And that's why they weren't traditionally trained from the age of 7 like the others were, because they were trained forever. The samurai, trained from age 4 to 5. They were physically powerful, but I do not think they were as strong as the Spartan or potentially as agile as the Vikings. Their true strength comes in their training. So intricate, so controlled. You don't need to be a giant, strong brute. They were intricate. They knew jujitsu. Again, they trained with firearms, archery, spear throwing, swordsmanship, shield. The samurai very much trained in, they just took you out with technique. The knight's training, they were treated like garbage their entire life as a squire, as a noble. Is a noble? Yeah, but I know as a squire. Their entire life built for mental and physical endurance. You were very much told, training as a youngin started at 7 as a knight, and was very much, you do what you're told. You work for me. That's how they induced the psychology of, I fight for my lord, my god, my king. You will clean horse poop off this fence for the next 3 days and breathe it in because I told you to do it. So they were trained very much less hand-to-hand, as I said before. They were trained especially on swordsmanship, archery, maces, shielding. They were trained in weaponry. Of course they could ride a horseback. Lancing, like the prince from Clash Royale. Dun, 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 dun. That's what they were trained in. Point-wise for physical prowess and training. Physical power and training, I'm gonna have the knight in last. They were nothing to sleep on, of course, but they're last here. 1 point. The Viking will come in second place. The Viking will come in third place, giving him 2 points. Great navigators. They were fast, but they weren't really built for endurance like the others. Of course, they can still endure a lot. Don't take me wrong. Third place will be the samurai. They were very, very well trained, but not as physically powerful as first place, the Spartan. My gosh, these things, they just kept on going. Final round, reputation, legacy. What did they leave behind? When I say Viking, you think bloodthirsty, wreaking havoc through cities. When I say Spartan, when you hear Spartan, we hear unphysically matched warrior that nothing can stop. When I say samurai, you think master of the martial arts, perfectly controlled, intricate killers. When you think the knight, you think honor, chivalry, do it for the greater good. All 4 of these people, and for as cheesy as it is, I don't think I can really pick one reputation over the other. I think all 4 of these warriors, all of them have such a strong reputation. Give 4 points to all of them. Dun, 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 dun. So, as you can see, there are the point systems for our 4 main guys. The winner is right there. I hope you really liked this video, because I know I loved making this video. You let me know your thoughts on it. I thought I really liked what this video is taking me. Have a great day. Ba, 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 ba.